Chapter 2 is systems of measurements. So the measurement systems that we'll be going over in this section are the metric system, the apothecary system, the household system, and then we'll be doing the conversions between the three systems. So starting with part 1 here with the metric system. So this was created in 1791 to help us simplify measurements. And this system of measurement is the simplest because it's based on powers of 10, just like our normal Hindu-Arabic numeral system. So the metric system is going to use 3 basic units of measurement. They're going to have a unit of volume, which we call a liter, denoted with an L, a unit of weight, which is a gram, denoted with a G, and the unit of length, which is a meter, denoted with a M. So usually we write these abbreviations with lower cases. We could use capital L for liter, capital G for gram, GM, and a capital M for meter. If you're using a lowercase l for liter, just be careful that if you're writing it by hand, it doesn't look like a 1. Okay, so the prefixes that are going to be used here are going to be multiples of 10. So we're going to be doing 6 for right now, and then we'll be doing a 7th one in a little bit. So these are all going to essentially be based off of the basic unit. So the basic unit meaning it's either a meter, a liter, or a gram. So that's going to be considered 1 unit. And then all of these other ones here are prefixes. So it's going to be for this first one up here, it's going to be kilo, then liter, so kiloliter, hectoliter, decaliter, and so on. So for kilo, denoted with a K, that's going to be 1,000 units. Hecto, denoted with an H, is going to be 100 units. Deca, denoted with a DA, so that's the only one that's a little bit odd because it's denoted DA, and deca starts with a D and ends with an A. That one is 10 units. Then we have deci, which is denoted with a D, which is 0.1 unit. Then centi, which is C, and that's 0.01 units. And milli, M, which is 0.001 units. And then, like we mentioned, notice that these are all powers of 10. All this is doing from unit to unit is moving that decimal over. So when we're using the system, if only one letter is used, it represents the basic unit. But if we have more than one letter there, then one of these prefixes is going to be coming before the unit itself. Okay, so let's just read a couple of these abbreviations before we do any conversions here. So the first one we have KM. So we have 2 letters, so we know that we have a prefix and then the original basic unit. So the K is going to be kilo and the M is going to be meter. So this is going to be kilometer. And we know that a kilometer is 1,000 meters. Next one we have ML, so 2 letters. We know that the first one's going to be the prefix, second one is the basic unit. So M is milli, L is liter, so this is milliliter. And this is 0.001 liters. Next one we have the DAG. So we can recognize here that the DA is going to be the prefix and the G is going to be the basic unit. And the DA is deca and the G is gram, so this is a decagram. And then we have an M, so it's just M, nothing else, so this is obviously meter. And lastly here we have HL, H being the prefix hecto, and then L being the basic unit liter. So this is a hectoliter. And that will be 100 liters. Okay, so let's get into making these conversions here. So like we mentioned, the metric system based on powers of 10. When we're converting within the metric system, all we have to do is just move the decimal point. So all we have to do is figure out how far we have to move it and in which direction we have to move it. So in order to remember the order that we had for these prefixes. We can use this mnemonic if we want. The mnemonic from largest to smallest prefix is King Henry danced with dogs, cats, mice, where you can see the bold letters in the front represent the prefixes. K for king, H for Henry, DA in danced, D in dogs, C in cats, M in mice represents kilo, hecto, deca, deci, centi, and milli. Okay, and then we have this table right here with the mnemonic on the top row, and then we have the abbreviation in the second row, and then we have the prefix written out in the third row. And then just notice for the basic unit here, we have liter, gram, and meter. Okay, so the steps for converting these. So the way that I'm going to be doing it, essentially like when we're given a problem and it says to convert it, I'm going to be writing down this middle row. That's what I'll have written down for essentially kind of showing my work. So the steps for converting these, what we're going to do is locate the prefix of the given original unit in the problem. That's where we're going to start. We're going to locate the prefix of the unit that we're converting to, and that's where we're going to end. And then we're going to count the steps it takes to go from start to end. And we're going to move the decimal point from the original number the same amount of places in the same direction that we just found in step 3. And then we might have to add zeros on the left or to the right of a number. Okay, so it's relatively simple as long as you have those prefixes memorized in the proper order. Okay, so let's do a couple examples here. So we want to convert 25.8 hectograms into kilograms. So writing down that middle row from before that I'll always write down for these problems. Okay, so I wrote all the prefixes, and I also included the gram, the G at the end of all the prefixes, because that's what our basic unit is here. So I have the basic unit here in the middle, and then I have all of the other prefixes next to it. So we're starting with hectogram, and we're going to kilogram. So we're starting here, and we're ending here. So we have to go one spot to the left in order to get there. So that means we have to move the decimal point from the original 1 to the left. So that means instead of 25.8, it's going to be moved to the left 1 unit, and this is going to be 2.58 kilograms. Okay, next one here, we want to convert 2,000 milliliters into liters. So writing out this the little prefixes here. So I just threw in the L at the end of all these prefixes, and then we have the L in the center representing liter for basic unit here. So we're starting from milliliters. So we're starting here, and we need to end here at liters. So we need to count how many jumps away that is, how many spots away that is. So that's going to be 3. So we need to move the decimal over 3 units to the left because we went to the left. So if there's no decimal written, it's always at the end. And we move this over 3 units. So instead of 2,000 milliliters, that's going to be the same as 2 liters. So obviously, we don't need to write 2.000. We can just leave it as 2. Okay, let's do another one. Let's convert 7.865 meters into centimeters. So we have our prefixes, and we're starting with meters. So 7.865 meters. We're starting here, and we're trying to end over here at centimeters. So we need to move 1, 2 to the right. So we find the decimal point in the original, we move it 2 to the right, and we get 786.5 centimeters as our answer. And for this last one here, we want to convert 4 kilograms into decigrams. Okay, so we're starting here at kilograms, and then we are going over here to decigrams, and we have to move it 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. So if we have a 4, that we're starting with that 4, with a decimal right here, we have to move that 4 to the right. That's going to go right there. So notice for this one, we actually do have to add in zeros here. So it's going to be 4, and then we have to throw in 4 zeros. So 4 kilograms equals 40,000 decigrams. Okay, so that's how we do these conversions within the metric system. So there is another thing here that we have to take into account. Another name for a milliliter is a cubic centimeter. And a cubic centimeter has an abbreviation of cc. So you may have heard this, you'll hear this all the time in hospitals or even something like medical shows. They'll say like 4 cc's. That is a milliliter. 1 cc is 1 milliliter. So the reason for this is a cubic centimeter is a geometric shape. It's a cube where each side is a centimeter. That contains 1 milliliter of fluid. So if we're making conversions to or from cc's, we need to use the milliliter location on our chart. We need to use the milli prefix on our chart. So for example here, let's convert 45.6 cc's into milliliters. So we actually don't have to do anything here because 1 cc equals 1 milliliter. So all we have to do is say that's equal to 45.6 milliliters because they're equivalent. Okay, and then for the next one, let's convert 80 cc's into liters. Okay, so here's our prefixes, and notice we're just using a capital L instead of a lowercase l. Once again, it doesn't matter, you can use either one. So I just wrote these ones out with the capital L since that's what it's given to us in the problem. So cc's here, we have to remember that it's milliliter. So that is over here, all the way on the right, that's a cc. And we're starting over here, starting with the cubic centimeters, and we're going to liters. So we have to count how many it takes. That's 1, 2, and 3. So that's 3 to the left. So that means we have to move the original decimal, which was 80. So it was after the 80, to the left 3. And we actually have to add in a 0 here. So it's going to be 0.08. And you can just leave this as 0.08. You don't have to write 0.080. So it's 0.08 liters. Okay, so 80 cc's is 0.08 liters. And for one more here, let's convert 0.009 liters into cubic centimeters, into cc's. So we have our little prefixes set up. So we're starting with liters this time, and we are going to convert that to cc's, which is milliliters on the right. So that's 1, 2, and 3 to the right. So we're going to move that decimal place 3 spots to the right. 1, 2, and 3. And 0.009 liters ends up being 9 cubic centimeters, or 9 cc's. Okay, so for one more thing here with this metric system, like I mentioned, the last prefix that we'll mention. So a lot of the times we're going to be measuring things in such a small quantity that a milligram is actually not going to be the best one to use, because a milligram as of right now is the smallest one that we just mentioned. So the one that we could use that is smaller is a microgram. And the microgram abbreviations that we can use here, there's technically two of them. It's either MCG or it is this other symbol which is called mu. It's the Greek letter called mu, and that represents a microgram also. So the conversion here is that 1 microgram is 0.000001 grams. So point, and then 5 zeros, and then 1 gram. So that's 6 decimal places to the right of a gram, and that means it's 3 places to the right of a milligram. So the new chart that I'll be using is this one right here. It is the, let's up a little bit. It's the same exact chart. Everything over here that I just highlighted is the same exact thing that we just did, except we add in the microgram over here. We are skipping these two, so we still have to include them in there. So I'm just going to put X as placeholders essentially. So there are abbreviations for those, but we're not doing them. So I'm just using placeholder X's to signify that we have to include those steps to get there. Okay, so let's convert 5 micrograms into milligrams, and let's write out this new prefix chart. Okay, so now we're going to start all the way over here at microgram, and we want to go to milligram, which is right over here. So we have to move this 1, 2, and 3 to the left. So that means we're going to have 5.0. We move that 3 to the left, 1, 2, and 3, and we have to add in zeros here. So it's going to be 0.005 milligrams. Okay, and I throw in the 0 here before the decimal. I just do that to draw attention to the fact that it is going to be there is a decimal there. Okay, so let's do one more for this one. We want to convert 0.0000075 grams into micrograms. So we have our prefixes, and we are starting at grams, and we are going all the way over here to micrograms. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 spots to the right. So we're going to move the decimal 6 to the right. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this becomes 7.5 micrograms. Okay, so that is part 1 with the metric system. Now going on to part 2 with the apothecary system. So the apothecary system is one of the oldest systems for drug measurement. It's not used very often, but obviously let's get familiar with it just in case. So the system is going to work with dry weights and volumes. So the basic unit of a dry weight is going to be called a grain. And a grain is going to be the weight of a grain of wheat. So you can see how old this probably seems. And the basic unit of volume is going to be a minim. And a minim is defined as the quantity of water weighing the same as 1 grain of wheat. So when we take a look down here at these equivalencies, there's going to be some measurements that we're familiar with that are used in the English system of measurement, but they're actually a little bit different. For example, like we have 1 pound equals 12 ounces. That is not the case for the English system of measurement. So it's a little bit different here. Okay, so here are the equivalencies and the symbols. So you can see that we have dry weight and then the symbols on the right, and the volume and the symbols on the right. So for dry weight, we have 1 dram is 60 grains, 1 ounce is 8 grams, 1 pound is 12 ounces, and then we have these symbols on the right. So grain is GR, so not to get confused with gram, and a dram looks like the number 3, and an ounce looks like the dram symbol with an extra couple slashes on top, and pound is what we're used to, LB. And for the volume, we have 1 fluid dram is 60 minims, 1 fluid ounce is 8 fluid drams, 1 pint is 16 fluid ounces, 1 quart is 2 pints, and 1 gallon is 4 quarts. And the symbols are over here on the right. Minim looks like an M. A fluid dram is going to be an F, and then the dram symbol, so that's pretty simple because fluid, so for F for fluid, and then the dram symbol for dram. And then similarly for the fluid ounce, it is an F, and then the ounce symbol, pint is PT, quart is QT, and gallon is capital C. Okay, so these are the equivalencies and the symbols that we'll be using. So when the name is spelled out, the Hindu-Arabic, that should say Hindu-Arabic numerals are used. So for example, it's going to be the Hindu-Arabic numeral 7 minims, and it's spelled out. And when the abbreviation is used, we're going to use lowercase Roman numerals, and they're going to be used after the abbreviation. So for example, if it was 7 minims, it would be 7 coming second in Roman numerals, lowercase, and then the minim abbreviation first. So it's either going to be written like that or written with the Roman numerals and the abbreviation. Okay, let's do a couple examples here. So let's write out these abbreviations using the full label and the Hindu-Arabic numerals. So for this first one, we have clearly a 3. We have a Roman numeral 3, so that's going to be the first part. And then we have to think about what this symbol means. Well, until you have it memorized, you have to go back up to the symbols up in the previous page. That is the symbol for a fluid ounce. So that's going to be 3 fluid ounces. Next one, we have taking a look at the Roman numeral first. So that's going to be the Roman numerals 10, 1, and 5. So the 1 comes before the 5, so that means we have to subtract that. It's the 5 minus 1, which is 4. So 10 plus 4, we get 14. And now for the GR is a little bit easier to remember which one that is. That one is grain. So this would be 14 grains. Next, for this one, we have PT and then ISS. So let's take a look at the Roman numerals first again. So for the ISS here, we have to remember that the SS is 0.5 or 1/2. So we have I, which is 1. So this is 1 and 1/2 or 1.5, depending on how you want to write it. I'll write it like this as a mixed number, 1 and 1/2, and the PT is pint, so 1 and 1/2 pints. Next one here, we have the symbol that looks like a 3, and then we have XL for the Roman numeral. So the XL here, the X is 10, the L is 50, but since the X is before the L, we have to subtract. So that's going to be 50 minus 10, so that's 40. And then we have to remember what this symbol means out front, and that is the symbol for dram. So this is 40 drams. And the next one we have, let's look at the Roman numeral, we have VI. So VI is going to be 6 because it's the 5 plus the 1. And then we have that M symbol, which is going to be the minim symbol, so it's 6 minims. And for the last one here, we have the Roman numeral IVSS. So since the I is before the V, we have to subtract, which gives us 4. The SS is 1/2, So this is going to be 4.5 or 4.5. And this capital C out front is gallons, so this is 4.5 gallons. Okay, so that's converting between the two ways to write these. And now let's go the other direction here. So let's write using the abbreviation symbol and Roman numerals. So just remember that the abbreviation symbol's first, Roman numerals are second. So the first example here is 2 quarts. So the symbol, the abbreviation for quarts, that one is QT. And then the Roman numeral for 2 is II. And just remember we're doing lowercase, so that's QT. II. Next, for 9 fluid drams, so we have to think about what the abbreviation is for fluid drams. So that's going to be the F for fluid and then the dram symbol. So the dram symbol is the one that looks like a 3, so that's going to be F, and then the dram symbol. And then we have to think about how to write 9 in Roman numerals. That's going to be I X. So 1 minus 10. Or sorry, 10 minus 1. Next, for 15 grains, so the symbol for grain is GR. And then for 15 in Roman numerals is going to be XV for 10 plus 5. And then 7.5 pounds. Pounds abbreviation is LB. And then 7.5. So first we have to write 7, which would be VII, 5 plus 1 plus 1, and then the 1/2 is going to be the SS at the end. Okay, and then for the last one, for 24 ounces. So the ounce symbol is essentially the dram symbol with that couple other slashes on top of it. And then we have to write 24 in Roman numerals. So first it's good to get to 20. So 20 would be X, and then 4 would be, adding 4 would be IV. Okay. And just a little side note down here, numbers over 50 can be written using the Hindu Arabic numerals with the symbol, which is essentially a combination of what we were just doing. We can use the Hindu Arabic numerals with the abbreviation for numbers over 50, and all fractions other than 1/2 are written using the Hindu Arabic numerals as well. Okay, so let's get to making conversions within the apothecary system. So this isn't as easy as it was in the metric system, because the metric system was based on tens and just moving the decimal place. The apothecary system is not based on tens, so we can't do this. So we essentially have to set up proportions using those equivalencies that we have a couple pages ago. And there's also another way to do this, which I think is a little bit easier. It is dimensional analysis, which I'll mention in this first example after we set up the proportion way of doing this first. So the one thing that we have to keep in mind here, like essentially the main thing, is we have to take into account the units when we're setting up these proportions or using the dimensional analysis method. Okay, so let's see an example first. Let's convert 1.5 drams into grains. So if we're setting up a proportion here, what we're going to do is we're going to say 1.5 drams is to how many grains. So 1.5 drams over X grains, where we're going to be solving for X. And then if you go back up to, this is the only time I'll actually scroll back up here, but if you go back up to the equivalencies, which is essentially the conversion here, the conversion is this one right here. 1 dram equals 60 grains. So that's how we're going to set up the other side. It is 1 dram for every 60 grains. So we had to have drams on top and grains on the bottom for both of these, or you could have had grains on top and drams on the bottom. They just both have to be the same on both sides. So once we have this, we would cross multiply, and we would get 1.5 times 60 equals 1 times x. So 1.5 times 60 is going to be 90, and 1 times x is just x, so we get x equals 90. And don't forget the units, that's going to be 90 grains. And I'm just going to actually use the abbreviation, so I'll just put 90 grains. So 1.5 drams is 90 grains. Okay, so let me just rearrange this so I have room for the dimensional analysis way to do it. So for the dimensional analysis way to do this, what you do is you start with what you have. So you write it down. We have 1.5 drams. Essentially, it's the same exact thing as the proportion, except it's almost like a little shortcut way to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by the conversion. And when we're multiplying by the conversion, we have to make sure that what we want to end up with is on the top of the fraction or in the numerator of the fraction. So we're looking for grains. So this is the conversion that we're using, 1 dram for every 60 grains, except this time we're going to have 60 grains on top, and that's going to be for every 1 dram. Okay, so we multiply by the conversion for dimensional analysis. Once again, we have to make sure the units are correct. So the reason why we set it up like this is because now what we can see is that if drams are in the numerator here, in the denominator here, they cancel, and then what we end up with is 1.5 times 60. 1.5 times 60 is 90. And then we can also see that we're left with grains. So that's 90 grains, which is the same answer as what we got up here. So it's kind of whatever way you want to do it. I think the way that I'm going to be setting this up is using dimensional analysis. It comes from setting up a proportion. Just know that you can always set up proportions or do it the dimensional analysis way. Okay, so let's do another one, 2 more here. So let's convert, what is that, 44 fluid ounces into pints. So obviously I'm kind of skipping converting it to the Hindu Arabic version of it. I'm just kind of reading it off quickly. So starting with 44 fluid ounces here. Once again, I'm going to do this the dimensional analysis method. We have to multiply this by the conversion, and the conversion has to be the conversion with fluid ounces and pints. So we know that based on the conversion that 16 fluid ounces equals 1 pint. So we're going to multiply that by the original. And we know that we want pints in the answer. So it's going to be 1 pint over 16 fluid ounces. So whichever one you want in the final answer has to be in the numerator and the other one's in the denominator. And this should make sense because now the fluid ounces are going to cancel. And this one we have to be a little bit careful because we have to divide. It's 44 times 1 divided by 16. 44 divided by 16 is going to give us 2.75, and that's 2.75 pints. Okay, so this way, in my opinion, is just a little bit quicker. And when we have to convert from something to something where we have to use 2 conversions, I think this way is a little bit easier. Just make sure you know how to do it both ways. Okay, so let's do one more for this one. So let's convert 180 minims into fluid drams. Okay, so starting with 180 minims here. We need to multiply this by the conversion. So you go up to a couple pages ago with the conversion if you don't have it memorized. And we know that 60 minims is 1 fluid dram. So we're going to multiply that by the 180 minims, but we're going to use a ratio for it. So we were looking for fluid drams, so we need that in the numerator. And that's going to be 1 fluid dram for every 60 minims. So when we multiply these together, the minims cancel, and we're left with 180 times 1 divided by 60. 180 divided by 60 is 3. So we're left with 3 fluid drams. And that would be our answer. Okay, so now for the next thing here is what I was mentioning, which gets a little bit more difficult. So sometimes the equivalence or the conversion needed for converting cannot be found on just one line in the chart that we have a couple pages ago. So for example, if we're trying to convert grains into ounces, if we took a look at the chart, it does not have one set conversion from grains into ounces. The chart will give us grains to drams, and then it'll give us drams to ounces, but not the one that we necessarily need. So when we have this issue, what we're going to do in this case is first we'll convert to drams, and then we'll convert drams to ounces, and that will give us our answer. So we have to do 2 conversions instead of 1, just based on the conversions that we have. Okay, so let's see an example here. Let's convert 16 pints into gallons. So I'm going to do the rest of these the dimensional analysis way. So this is going to be 16 pints. And we know our goal here is to get into gallons, right? So let's take a look at the conversion up here from a couple pages ago. So we're going from pints to gallons. So we're right down here in the volume section. We have pints here and gallons here, but they're not together. But what we can do is convert pints to quarts, and then we can convert quarts to gallons. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to our problem and rewrite these conversions down there so we just have them right in front of us. Okay, so here are our conversions. So once again, let's start with pints, and then we have to convert to quarts first, and then from that, we'll convert to gallons. The reason why I'm using dimensional analysis is specifically kind of for these problems right here, because we can do this all in one big swoop. So let's take a look from pints to quarts, which is going to be this first one right here. So if we're trying to get to quarts, we need quarts on top. So that's 1 quart for every 2 pints. And what this is going to do is that's going to cancel the pints, and we're going to be left with quarts on top. And what we can do after this is then convert from quarts to gallons. So I'll do this one actually in 2 kind of small steps just to show what we're actually doing. I'll do the next ones in one big swoop. So the pints cancel just like they did before, and we're left with 16 times 1 divided by 2, which is 8. That gives us 8 quarts. And now we can use this second conversion to go from quarts to gallons. So we need gallons on top because that's what we want. So that's 1 gallon for every 4 quarts. And the quarts are going to cancel for this one. and we are left with 8 times 1 divided by 4, which is 2. So this is 2 gallons. Okay, so 16 pints equals 2 gallons based on these 2 conversions that we had to do. Okay, so let's take a look at these next ones, and once again, these next ones, I'm going to do it in one big swoop. So we want to convert 2.5 fluid ounces into minims. So let's take a look up here at the conversions. So fluid ounces to minims. Or fluid ounces to minims here. So we have, looks like these first two. We have fluid ounces here. We have minims here, but they're not on the same line. So what we can do is convert to fluid drams first, and then after that we can convert to minims. So fluid ounces to fluid drams, and then fluid drams to minims. So I'll go down and write these for our problem. So we have our conversions, and we are starting with 2.5 or 2, and I'm going to use 2.5 instead of 2.5. We should always use the decimal version instead of the mixed number version. So it's going to be 2.5 fluid ounces, and we need to convert to fluid drams first. So we have to multiply by that conversion, which is the second one here. So it's going to be 8 fluid drams for every 1 fluid ounce. And like I mentioned, I'm going to do this one in one big swoop. You could do it the same way that we just did it, but I'm going to take into consideration now this next conversion. We need to multiply this now, so I'm multiplying 3 things together at once. We need to multiply by the next conversion, which means we need 60 minims on top, because that's what we want our result to be, for every 1 fluid dram. Okay, so when we multiply these together, what we have to recognize, and the reason that we did it, is that the fluid ounce will cancel with this fluid ounce, and then this fluid dram will cancel with this fluid dram. And then we're going to be left with just the minim in the numerator, which is what we wanted for the units. So this one's actually kind of easier. Since everything is being divided by 1 down here in these denominators, all we have to do is multiply all of these numerators together. So it's going to be 2.5 times 8 times 60, and that'll end up giving us 1,200 minims. Okay, so all we had to do was multiply these numerators together, since all of these denominators were 1. Okay, so let's do maybe one more of these before we get into the household system. So we want to convert 2,800 grains into pounds. So taking a look up at the the conversions. So we were going from grains to pounds. So here is grains. Pounds is until all the way down here. So this one actually we're going to have to do an extra conversion. So we're going to convert from grains to drams, and then drams to ounces, and then ounces to pounds. So I'll go back and I'll rewrite all of these down on the problem. Okay, and we are starting with 2,800 grains. And let's multiply by this first conversion here, which is going to be converting to drams. So we need drams in the numerator, so that's this first one. So that's going to be 1 dram divided by 60 grains. So that'll end up canceling the grains. Next one, we need to go from drams to ounces, which is the second one here. So it's going to be 1 ounce divided by 8 drams. So this will cancel the drams. And then it's going to be times the last one, which will give us our pounds. It's going to be 1 pound divided by 12 ounces. So taking a look at this as a whole, we'll see that the grains are going to cancel. And then we see that the drams will cancel. And that the ounces will cancel. And we'll be left with pounds. So when we're multiplying these together, we have to be a little bit careful. So notice that all of the numerators, other than the original, are 1. So it's going to be 2,800 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is just 2,800. That whole entire denominator, though, we have to multiply that together first. So we will end up getting that 2,800 number from the original. If we multiply the denominators 60 times 8 times 12, we end up getting 5,760. Our units are going to be pounds. You could do this in one step if you want. You just have to be careful. And dividing those, we end up getting 0.5 pounds. Okay, so that's our final answer here. So 2,800 grams equals a half pound or 0.5 pounds. Okay, so for the part 3 here. So for the household system of measurement, so this is typically the least accurate way to do measurements, but it's probably the one that we're most familiar with because these are household systems of measurement that we're used to. And the only one that we're going to be using, the only equivalencies are going to be for volume. So it's not going to be for dry weight like the other ones allowed us to use. And the basic unit for the household system is going to be a drop, which is abbreviated GTT. And in case you're wondering, it comes from the Latin word gutta, which is water drainage. Okay, so for these household conversions, for these household equivalencies, we have the volume conversions on the left, and then we have their symbols on the right. So we have 1 teaspoon is 60 drops, 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons, 1 ounce is 2 tablespoons, 1 teacup is 6 ounces, and 1 glass is 8 ounces. So the symbols for drops, once again, we mentioned drops is GTT. Teaspoon is lowercase t or TSP. A tablespoon is capital T or TBSP, and an ounce is OZ. Okay, so just like before, to make these conversions, we're going to use proportions or dimensional analysis, just like we've been doing, and we just have to remember to use the units again to help us set these up correctly. Okay, so the only thing that's new here is the different measurements. We're doing the conversions the same way. Okay, so the first one, let's convert 90 drops into teaspoons. So starting with 90 drops. So 90 drops. So let's look back up at the conversion up here. So we have this first one. We know that 1 teaspoon equals 60 drops. So what we can do, dimensional analysis, we can multiply. We need teaspoon on top because that's what we're looking for. So 1 teaspoon divided by 60 drops. And when we multiply these, the drops cancel. We're left with 90 times 1 divided by 60, which gives us 1.5. So this equals 1.5 teaspoons. Okay, so 60 drops is 90 drops is 1.5 teaspoons. So easy enough for that one. Let's do a couple more. We want to convert 4.5 glasses into ounces. So taking a look up here, for glasses to ounces, we do have a conversion that's direct. One conversion needed. 1 glass is 8 ounces. So we're starting with 4.5 glasses, and we need to multiply that by that conversion, which is going to be ounces on top, because that's what we need. 8 ounces over 1 glass, and the glasses are going to cancel. So we have to multiply 4.5 times 8. We don't have to divide by 1 because that's obviously going to not change anything. So 4.5 times 8 is going to give us 36. That's going to be 36 ounces. And you could use the abbreviation if you wanted to. You can use OZ. Okay, and then the next one, we want to convert 28 teaspoons into tablespoons. So for the conversion here, it is 1 tablespoon equals 3 teaspoons. So starting off with 28 teaspoons, we multiply that by the conversion. The conversion is 1 tablespoon for every 3 teaspoons. And when we multiply these together, the teaspoons cancel, which is why we did it. And we have 28 times 1 divided by 3. 28 divided by 3, that'll end up getting 9.3 repeating. I'm going to actually write this as a mixed number. I'm going to write this as 9 1/3. That's 9 1/3 tablespoons. So you could have recognized to write this as a mixed number once again, because if you plug this in the calculator or you divide it by hand, you'll get a repeating decimal. So without having to round here, you could recognize that 28 divided by 3, convert that to a mixed number. That would end up being 9 1/3. Okay, let's do a couple more here. We want to convert 12 ounces into teaspoons. So taking a look up at the chart, we're going from ounces to teaspoons. So here is ounces, here is teaspoons. They're not with each other, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to convert from ounce to tablespoon, and then tablespoon to teaspoon. So I'll go down and write these on our question. Okay, and we're starting with 12 ounces here. So what we have to do is use this the second conversion and get it to tablespoons. So that's going to be 2 tablespoons divided by 1 ounce. So that'll convert it to tablespoons. And then after that, we're going to convert it to teaspoons, which is going to be this first conversion. So that's going to be 3 teaspoons. So teaspoons on top, because that's what we want. 3 teaspoons over 1 tablespoon. Okay, so when we multiply these, the ounces cancel, the tablespoons cancel, we're left with teaspoons. And notice once again that we have only a 1s in the denominator, so we don't even have to worry about that. So we multiply 12 times 2 times 3, and we end up with 72 teaspoons. Okay, let's do one more here. So let's convert 450 drops into ounces. So going up to the table, we want drops to ounces. So here is drops, here is ounces. They're not going to be direct. So we're going to have to convert from drops to teaspoons, teaspoons to tablespoons, and then tablespoons to ounces. So we're going to have a couple different conversions going on here. So let's write those all out for the question. Okay, so we're starting with 450 drops. So the first one we're going to use is the first conversion. So it's going to be 1 teaspoon divided by the 60 drops. That'll give us 2 teaspoon units. Next, we're going to go to tablespoons. So we're going to use the second one. So we're going to multiply by 1 tablespoon over 3 teaspoons. Lastly, to get from tablespoons now to ounces, we use the last one, and we multiply by 1 ounce over 2 tablespoons. Okay, so putting this all together, the drops cancel, the teaspoons cancel, the tablespoons cancel, and when we're multiplying these together, we notice that we have 450 times 1 times 1 times 1 in the numerator. So I'm just going to use one extra step here and say that's 450 divided by, the denominator is going to be 60 times 3 times 2, which is going to be 360. This will be in ounces. And dividing these, 450 divided by 360, that ends up giving us 1.25 ounces. Okay, so that is the household system and converting within that. And for the last thing here, it's going to be for part 4, is going to be converting between all 3 of these systems, converting between the metric, apothecary, and household systems. So the nice thing is that we're going to be doing these the same exact way. The not so nice thing is that most of these are just approximate equivalences, approximate conversions. Most of these are rounded, and it's to make these calculations just a little bit easier. Okay, so we only have this page right here. We have the dry weight conversions and the volume conversions. So for the dry weight conversions, we have metric to apothecary and vice versa. So we have metric 60 milligrams equals 1 grain. And then we have 1,000 milligrams, which is 1 gram, equals 15 grains. So notice that these are the same units, milligram to grain. And we'll mention why that is in 1 second. And then for the next one, we have 4 grams for equals 1 dram. And then we have 30 grams equals 1 ounce. So that's metric to apothecary. And then for volume, we have metric to apothecary to household, relating them all together for volume. For the first one, we have 1 milliliter is 16 minims, which is 15 drops. 4 milliliters is 1 fluid dram, which is 60 drops. 15 milliliters is 4 fluid drams, which is 1 tablespoon. 30 milliliters is 1 fluid ounce, which is 2 tablespoons. 500 milliliters is 1 pint, and 1,000 milliliters is 1 quart. Okay, so a couple of notes down here. First of all, try to memorize these. And there are 2 things which I mentioned that repeated themselves. So we had milligrams to grams, and then we had milligrams to grains, and milligrams to grains again. We had 2 of them, 2 different conversions. The reason is because this first one, 60 milligrams to 1 grain, is more accurate for smaller measures. 1,000 milligrams for 15 grains is more accurate for larger measures. So we choose which conversion to use based on which one is closest in size to the information given to us in the question. And it's the same thing for this other one as well. You may have noticed right here, we get essentially the same 2 units of measurement. We go from milliliters to fluid dram. And the reason is the same reason as what I just said. This one is going to be more accurate for the small measures, and this one is more accurate for the larger measures. Okay, so let's do a couple examples of these. So we want to convert 12 grains into milligrams. So we're going to start with 12 grains and we're going to get this into milligrams. Let's take a look at our conversion. So these are dry weights. So we have grains to milligrams. We know we're going to be using one of these. So the one that is closest to 12 grains is going to be this 15 grains and not the 1 grain. So we have to use this second one and not the first one because 12 is closer to 15. If you happen to get one where it was directly between Like if it was halfway between 1 and 15, then you can pick whichever one to use. It wouldn't make too much of a difference. Okay, so let's write down that conversion. So multiplying this, we're going to have 12 grains is going to be multiplied by 1,000 milligrams divided by 15 grains. So when we're multiplying these, the grains cancel. We have to do 12 times 1,000, which is 12,000. 12,000 divided by 15 gives us 800 milligrams. And I'll just use the abbreviation for this just so we're comfortable using the abbreviations. So 800 milligrams. Okay, so easy enough for that one, just the same thing that we've been doing. Next one, we have 2 milliliters into drops. So taking a look up at the chart, we have milliliters and drops right here. So milliliters in metric, drops in household. The one that we should be using for 2 milliliters is closer to this first one. So we're going to use this one. So it's 1 milliliter equals 15 drops. Okay, so hopefully we can actually do this one in our head, because all we have to do to get from 1 milliliter to 2 is double it, which means we have to double the 15 drops to get our answer. So I'll just write the answer real quick. So we end up getting 30 drops. Next one, we have 45 grams into ounces. And let's take a look up here, and that's ounces in the Apothecary system. So grams into ounces is going to be, oops, sorry, not just this bottom one, is going to be this bottom one. We have 30 grams for every 1 ounce. So that's what we're going to be using. And I'll try to use the abbreviations just so we make sure we're comfortable with that. So we're starting with 45 grams, and we need to multiply this by 1 ounce over 30 grams. So when we multiply these, the grams cancel. 45 times 1 divided by 30, that gives us 1.5 ounces. So you could write the word out ounces, or you can use a symbol. Whenever I'm dealing with something that like ounces, where it shows up in the household system as well as the Apothecary system, or the English system and the Apothecary system, I just tend to use the symbol so I know which one I'm referring to. Okay, I'll do a couple more here. So let's convert 45 milliliters into fluid drams. So taking a look at the conversion, we have milliliters to drams right here. So the one that we're going to use, we're starting with 45 milliliters. That's closer to 15. So that means we're going to be using this one. 15 milliliters equals 4 fluid drams. Okay, so we're going to start with 45 milliliters. We're going to multiply that by the 4 fluid drams divided by 15 milliliters. And the milliliters cancel. So this one we have to do 45 times 4, which is 180. 180 divided by 15 gives us 12. So this is 12 fluid drams, and write it with the notation to make sure that we're comfortable with it. And that's our answer for that one. And we'll do 2 more and then one last thing and we'll be good. So let's convert 135 milligrams into grains. So scrolling up to this one, 135 milligrams into grains. That's one where we had 2 of them. 135 milligrams is closest to 60 rather than 1,000. So we're going to be using that first one, 60 milligrams for 1 grain. So let's write that down. So starting with 135 milligrams, we multiply this by the conversion, 1 grain over 60 milligrams. The milligrams cancel off, and we get 135 times 1 divided by 60, which gives us 2.25 grains. Okay, and then the last one for these ones, let's do 5 quarts into milliliters. So taking a look up at the conversions, quarts to milliliters, so that's right here. So 1,000 milliliters equals 1 quart. Let's write that down. So this is another one that we should be able to do without any work, because we're going from 5 quarts to milliliters. 1 quart equals 1,000 milliliters. So all we have to do to get from 1 to 5 is multiply by 5, which means we have to multiply the milliliters by 5 also, which would be 5,000 milliliters. So I'll just write down the work real quick. So setting that up, we get 5,000 milliliters is 5 quarts. Okay, so that's a conversion within those, between those 3 systems of measurement. So one last conversion here. So in the English system of measurement, we know that 16 ounces is 1 pound, which was different from the household system, or sorry, the apothecary system. So 16 ounces in the English system is 1 pound, and this is what we use for weight. But translating this from pounds to kilograms, which we might need to do a lot because kilograms is in the metric system, we need to use this conversion. So it's 1 kilogram is approximately 2.2 pounds. So remember that that squiggly equal sign means approximately. And just like before, we can solve these problems using proportion or dimensional analysis. Okay, so let's do a couple problems here. So let's convert 50 kilograms into pounds. So starting with 50 kilograms, we're going to multiply this by the conversion. The conversion is right up there highlighted. That's going to be 2.2 pounds. I'm going to use the abbreviations. Divided by 1 kilogram. So we knew to put the pounds on top because that's what we wanted. And so the kilograms cancel. We get 50 times 2.2, which is 110. So that's 110 pounds. So 50 kilograms is 110 pounds. And for this last one here, before we get to this last sheet with the summary on it, is convert 275 pounds into kilograms. So setting up the conversion, 275 pounds times 1 kilogram divided by 2.2 pounds. And we knew to put the kilograms on top because that's what we wanted, and then it lets the pounds cancel off. So this is 275 times 1 divided by 2.2, which ends up giving us 125 kilograms. Okay, so 275 pounds is 125 kilograms. Okay, so that's it for this section. This last page here is a summary. So we have this metric system for part 1 with our basic units right here. And then if you pretty much know this table and just know how to convert, then you're pretty much good for that section. Part 2, the apothecary system with all of the equivalencies and conversions and symbols. And for part 3, the household system with its corresponding equivalencies and symbols. Part 4, converting between the three systems, and these other conversions that we did throughout this chapter right here at the bottom. Okay, so definitely use this last page to help you study and memorize these conversions, and that is it for chapter 2.